You ever have your ducks in a row until you didn't? That happened to me this week. I had my show all planned out, and then the Newsboys' Micheal Tait bombshell hit. Didn't want to talk about it at first, but it's just grown from its inception since the story broke. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Welcome to No Apology with Emilee and Chris. It is a variety talk show designed to have you laugh louder, dig deeper, and live larger into the Lord Jesus Christ. It's long form, which means we take our time. We don't have any program director. We don't have any commercial breaks. We don't have any hard stops. We just want to have conversation with people just like you. Folks who love Jesus and want to go deeper in his word. And this Newsboy story hit us maybe not quite as hard as others. And part of it is we've been there, got the t-shirt, and there's some depth and insight that we want to share with you. Mm-hmm. And Emilee, you have the con.
Well, I had my show all ready to talk about the great falling away, and I was going to talk about like AI and how that's progressing, how that's impacting actual credible teachers.
Yeah.
And also Bible translations. They're starting to kind of really go off the rails, and how this maybe all plays into the great falling away.
It was a great show because the Bible translations and AI and the combination there, you're going to have to tune in next week.
Next week, we will bring that.
Happened.
Yes.
Something
all
changed.
of a sudden, there was this bombshell that hit. Micheal Tait has been accused by several people, several young men, that he sexually assaulted them, and he has admitted that he's guilty, that he's been involved in drug abuse and homosexuality.
And if you don't know, Micheal Tait was one of the founding members of DC Talk. Mm-hmm. And then when Peter Furler, the original Newsboys lead singer, left the band, Micheal Tait was hired and has been touring with them for over a decade now. And he's the voice behind the songs God's Not Dead, Born Again, and some of those other awesome post Peter Furler Newsboys songs. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But the reaction has been all over the map, Emilee. What's your take?
It has. Well, there's a lot of reaction, and it seems like the reaction is really, for the most part, coming out of emotion or opinion. And like I said, I didn't want to do this story. I thought it's such a crying shame, literally. I didn't really even want to talk about it, but the reaction to the news now has almost become more telling than the bombshell itself. And so early yesterday, I'm like, we have to talk about this. So you've probably heard about it, but maybe you haven't yet. There has been some homosexual, predatory behavior toward men in their 30s by Micheal Tait. This allegedly took place between the periods of 2004 and pretty currently to like less than 10 years ago. And the first time I actually saw this story was watching the podcast Brylan Riggs. He's really good. He covers a lot of this stuff. And it was really insightful. And I thought, you know what? Maybe we should talk about this.
Yeah, he always starts his little YouTubes, which we pretty much watch on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brylan.
Yeah. He's a very likable guy. He takes you into the Bible every time.
He tries to defend the faith. And it's a good deal.
He's very, very good at it. And the thing about his podcast is they're usually about 15 to 20 minutes. So they're real quick. And so I like to tune into them as much as I can. Brylan Riggs, if you're interested. Okay, so Faith Live Canada. It's a touring company. They were the first ones to really put out there that there are issues, there are problems, and they actually canceled the Canadian tour, I think back in May, saying that some news had come out regarding Micheal Tait, and they just could not promote this tour, and they canceled the tour. Now, this is a touring company. Here's the thing. When you do that, you lose money.
Yeah.
Because you've already paid people to do certain things. So the allegations were obviously, number one, serious enough and credible enough to them to go ahead and cancel the tour.
Well, another thing you need to keep in mind is that promoters don't do this. And when I heard first that they were canceling the tour, it was because Micheal Tait had abruptly resigned from the
Yeah,
Newsboys.
he had left.
And I'm thinking, okay, they don't have the right lead singer. They're not going to draw sell enough tickets. So the promoters are doing a preemptive strike versus taking a huge loss where we think we're going to fill 15,000 seats and we're, basing all of our compensation to everybody, including the band on that. We're probably only going to sell 3,000 or 4,000 seats. Why don't we just cancel? That's what I thought in air when I first heard about it. And they started referring to behavioral stuff
Right.
in the cancellation notice, and the Newsboys didn't address it at all at this point.
Right. At that point, nothing had come out from the Newsboys or from Micheal Tait himself. Now, interestingly, Faith Live Canada got a huge backlash. They didn't cite specifically what the revelations were because I think they just kind of felt like it's not our place to put that out there and make the accusations and make it about that. We're just letting you know that we're canceling the tour. And fans were upset, understandably so. But
there was also confusion. Like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, they weren't specific.
But the thing is that then there was backlash toward Faith Live that, they thought it was maybe just because Micheal Tait had left the band. Well, I still want to see him. And they got some heated backlash from the fans. And I thought that was very interesting because this is what we've kind of lost as a culture. We've lost the ability to just, hold your tongue for a minute. Just take a breath and let's see what gets fleshed out.
Instead, we used to say, it's going on Twitter right now,
Before you start leveling more accusations and judging what's going on. So I was really sad to hear that they were canceling the tour. And I thought, but whatever's disturbing them, that has to come to light. That has to be made flesh.
And then it just started rolling out to the public.
It did start rolling out because by this time, the word was out and it was spreading fast that Micheal had been involved in sexually assaulting young men and using cocaine, kind of what he refers to as leading a double life. Okay. So this is going to come to light. The accusations have been made. There was actually a 2-year investigation into these accusations, which means that they weren't made public until they were really, really sure. These accusations are very credible according to the people that have been investigating it. And of course, then Micheal did come out with a statement acknowledging that these accusations, while they might not be 100% accurate, they were for the most part true. And he wasn't going to deny it. And he wasn't going to fight it, and say, well, that's not true and that's not true. That he just acknowledged it. He apologized. And his statement was not too bad. However, there were a couple things that really bothered me. Number one, he said he'd been living a double life and that he needed to work on himself and so on. And I think people mostly assume when he says he was leading a double life that he was a Christian, but he had this problem. And this problem was the other life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this has been going on for, we know, at least 20 years.
And we'll get into it later, but we also know that many of these Christian artists are hardly Christian in so many ways.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that in the second half of this. But it is ironic that the initial thought with a handful of folks regarding the telling of the story immediately go to, well, he's a Christian who just fell down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like that when you talk about double life.
Yeah, 20 years is a long time. So this is an assumption, this is an opinion, this isn't a fact, this isn't anything other than my perception of things, is that his double life was really that he was a Christian. because
meaning
meaning
that he was living his normal
he
carnal
was living
self,
who he
and he was
was.
faking the Christianity for his
Right.
career.
But what
That's
can you
what it looks like, doesn't it?
what's easier to fake? Your real stuff that's going on behind the scenes or the stuff that you just present to the public?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's easier to fake, right?
And what makes this such an important conversation to have is that at the end of the day, every one of us wants to hide our sin.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to wear some sort of a mask. And when we want to be authentic with people, that's almost a synonym for we're going to show you our sin, which,
Right.
yeah, that ain't cool. We're supposed to be saints. I'm on the road to heaven, you know?
Yeah.
And so the true authentic Christian will come to grips with that,
Yeah.
and will continue to try to put on a good front. Will try to do the things that Jesus wants them to do, but they'll also have a repentant heart, and they'll stay grounded in reality, and then they'll have grace for others.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. He said then in the last 6 months, he has really, tried to work on himself and realized he had to make a change and blah, blah, blah. But, when there's a 2-year investigation going on into claims that you've been doing wrong things, it's not uncommon for people involved in that stuff to realize, this is going to come to a head.
Well, and then
You know what I mean?
if you've got a financial stake in it, you're going to do all you can to kind of keep it down, downplay it. Hey, if we don't have to talk about it, let's not. Tate accepting of the LGBT lifestyle, but it remained a secret within the music industry. How much of a secret do you think it really remained?
Right.
And how many people had their hunches, but you don't go out and say?
Well, that's one of the
You know what
things.
I mean? You got to trust a man's testimony. It's kind of the vibe behind the scenes.
I think that's why there wasn't a lot of talk about it, because you don't want to say things that aren't true. Bravo. That's absolutely biblical. That's absolutely what God calls us to do. But now that those suspicions have been affirmed, there is a lot of talk about, a lot of people suspected that he was very affirmative of the LGBTQ lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have the proof. Now here's the kicker, because like I said earlier, the reaction to the bombshell is really more telling than the bombshell itself.
What is the kicker?
The kicker is the reaction that people are having toward Christians because of this bombshell.
I thought you were going to go with that the band claims they didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
That to me was part of the kicker.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
And I've got something on that coming up a little bit later,
Yeah.
backstage with the Newsboys. But
Did they know? Did they not? I don't really
that's
care.
what I thought the kicker was going to be. But you're saying the kicker is the reaction.
The reaction. Caleb actually pulled their music, Newsboys, just all Newsboys music. And they didn't say it's gone forever. They just said, we're going to give it a rest because of how fresh and raw all this is. And so they made an announcement, which is kind of weird because, Chris, you and I we've worked in radio.
Yeah.
And I was
Big
a program
stations, big
director at one time. And we had pulled artists for different reasons, not very many.
No.
But just 1 or 2, and we never made an announcement about it.
When you were program director, when we had our internet radio station, and you pulled all of Jars of Clay's music, I was bummed.
I was too,
because "God Lift Your Head" is one of my favorite songs, and still is. And in my iTunes playlist, I still have it at number 3 on my Christian iTunes playlist. In spite of your program director pulling ways. And every time if I have it on in the car, that song comes on, I kind of wait for you to say something. You don't. You never say nothing.
I really don't, because I just, that. Here's the thing.
But then I agree with you that when Jars of Clay lead singer came out in support of the homosexual movement, he's since totally unveiled that he's completely woke. Pulling his music was the right thing to do.
Right.
I got a comment about the Caleb thing, but tell me about it tell everybody about it before I comment.
Yeah, they just made an announcement that they were going to give Newsboys music a rest on Caleb. And the reaction to that, if you go to their social media, is so sad. I couldn't believe what I was reading. And so let's take a look at just a few of them. Do you have them, Chris? Yeah, here's one that says, "I don't agree that they are pulling the music. This person says, seems like cancel culture. Misconduct of any kind by a religious leader does not automatically cancel the wonderful kingdom work they did or lives they affected for the good.
Sorry, did you hear my
I was shocked.
Are you doing kingdom work, really?
Yeah, I was shocked by her comparison of that to cancel culture.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous. Let's take a look at the next one. I tried to block out their names, and I guess I didn't do a very good job.
Looks like you used mascara to do it.
I just took my finger with the marker on the, on my phone,
on the digital
or whatever. That's good enough.
Whatever. This is public. We're not trying to highlight the names.
Yeah,
so
it's not about the people.
To find the names. That's your business.
This isn't to shame anyone at all. But here's another comment. It says the music is still a relevant story of God, and we as listeners should not be punished by not getting to listen to it.
So you're getting punished by K-Love?
There's kind of two things going on here. Number one, I don't think K-Love's trying to punish anyone. And this is the thing. These were consistent themes throughout the vast majority of comments.
Well, it's people
It's
reacting.
not fair that you're punishing the band, you're punishing me, you're punishing your listen. They're not punishing anyone.
Well, the point that this guy's making, although falls into your trap, I kind of agree with it.
What do you mean?
Well, I just don't. I think you're kind of focusing on the word punished. The music still has a relevant story, and listeners, we should, not be, chastised for wanting to listen to it. Now, on K-Love is different than in your music playlist.
No one's being chastised for listening to it.
I felt like when I kept that One Jars of Clay song in my iTunes, because it's one of my favorite all-time songs, I felt like that might... you canceled it on the radio station that we were with.
That's your baggage that you're trying to lay on me.
No. I got a thought about K-Love. I'll let you finish your bit. Then I got to
go back to it because I already forgot what he said. But it says by not letting us listen to it, no one's not letting you listen to the Newsboys. Okay, this is just the radio station and their format, and they're making their changes, which they have every right to do. Look, they stopped playing artists for a lot of different reasons. They're no longer Christians, or their music is just past its time, or whatever. No one's forbidding you to listen to the Newsboys.
Nor are you being punished.
Get a grip.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. But I still I'll tell you what I think K-Love should have done and where they were weaker in just a minute.
Yeah.
I think we got one
I'm
more here.
surprised like I said earlier, I'm surprised they made an announcement. Because
I'm not.
Like, I would pull music, but I didn't make an announcement
with
over
this story,
it,
with as hot as it is and as damaging as it is to Christianity. Any station out there, Christian station out there, that does not make a statement, I'm disappointed in.
Yeah.
What does your statement say?
Yeah.
Will say a lot about you, because there's so many Christian broadcasters out there that quite honestly are just in it because they can make a buck. They couldn't care less about what people are doing, how they're behaving, or whether you're saved or not. And they try to make everything as generic as possible. So from the farthest over on this side to the farthest over on that side, you'll still listen, which is why most Christian music is God is love or Jesus is your boyfriend.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go any deeper than that. But anyway, I'll get back to the radio station statements in a second.
That gets back to what I was saying before, where we jump and we open our blabby mouths and we say things, whether it's out of opinion or emotion or whatever, and you're not, let's just let this play out. Let's just take a breath, find out what's real, and then we can go on and we can make statements. But people have lost it completely.
They have
to be the first person to say what's what and where the bear does the thing in the woods, right? And so it's like,
I'm waiting for my comeback patiently.
So here's the reality, and I don't know for sure, but I think from the information that I was gathering, and I was sifting through from a ton of different sources, I think K-Love's perception was kind of in the reality of how fresh and raw and awful and in just politeness to the victims, we're giving that music a rest right now. Okay. Because here's the thing, there's more victims. You can't tell me there's only 3. This has been going on since 2004 is the earliest that we know of.
Well,
Words like predatory, assault, grooming are all part of the formal accusation. So this isn't, oh, I fell into temptation just so unexpectedly. And I'm sorry, if you're involved in this type of behavior, you don't assault someone first day out of the shoot, right? So this has been going on much longer than that. We have to just rationally come to that conclusion. And so this has been going on for a long time. I can't think that these are the only 3 victims that there are.
okay.
And the reactions that people are having are so selfish.
Yeah. Defend.
I want to listen to their music. How dare you change my
Oh, yeah.
radio
Well,
station? And they cannot think for even one moment.
mhm,
What about the people who have who the victims are?
mhm.
Because here's the reality: when something like this is going on, drug abuse and sexual exploitation, really, it's abusive. It, a lot of things can happen. Number one, it can cause someone to question their own sexuality.
Mhm.
It can cause someone to they can come to a crisis in their faith.
Mhm.
Like what's going on, and ultimately it could even have someone abandon the faith altogether. Hey, if this is what being a Christian is, and you've, sexually abused me, or, I don't want anything to do with it, right?
Mhm.
So we talked about this a lot. Sin splatters, right?
Mhm.
So Micheal Tait wasn't doing this stuff by himself all alone. So who was it that he was doing cocaine with?
Mhm.
Who was it that he was having these exploitations with? And you have to understand that as a extremely wealthy, famous, influential person, he would be the one to either say yay or nay. He would be the one that could either stop it or be the one to start it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, just having spent the time we have with, not just the Newsboys multiple
Mhm.
times, but other really famous people. They have a power over the
Yeah.
line of people waiting for them to just
Yes.
come out. I mean,
Yeah.
which is one of the first things you'll know if somebody has like the rock star mentality is how little they care if they're on time for something.
Mm.
I mean, I remember there was one band that was like 35 minutes late for no reason other than just they were. I don't want to call
I
names,
know who you're
so
talking about.
we'll just call them Switchfoot. Uh, I mean, there's telltale signs when
Yes.
when you get behind the curtain. There's telltale signs that go along with it.
Mhm.
And the thing that bothers me the most about the potential victims in this case that we're talking about is that Micheal Tait's double life is that some of these folks will have an ongoing crisis of faith,
Mhm.
or worse yet, they'll leave the faith altogether.
Right, right.
And so there is a chance for healing now that Micheal has come clean. Because
Yes.
it's like we can realize that he is not a Christian influencer. He is
Yeah.
not a Christian professing the right things about Christ. He might say the right words, but his life doesn't match up and
It
hasn't
doesn't
for so
match
long that
up.
when he says he's living a double life, the fake life is the Christian life, and
Yeah.
that much is stone cold
Yeah.
obvious. I know we have one more here we need to get to.
Well, what we have to realize too is these accusations are not accusations of, oh, he had a pickup line. You know what I mean? These are of actual aggressions
Yeah.
against people. And here's what I want people to think about too. What if the victims of this, I don't know how old the guy is. I'm guessing he's about 50 something.
Yeah, Micheal Tait's got to be in his 50s.
Uh,
I mean, Toby Mac is our age.
Yeah.
And I think we're the exact same age.
Right,
Like we
right.
I graduated high school same year as Toby Mac.
Yeah.
And DC Talk, Micheal was there, and they started it at college. So
Mhm.
Michael's got to be mid 50s to early 60s.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
should
his
look
age.
that up. I didn't, but either way,
Yeah, I didn't care enough to look it up
about-
either.
what if these actions were being taken toward early 20-year-old girls and women? Would your sentiments be the same? I think not.
Why? Why do you think not?
Well, the whole Me Too movement and the whole, just having to go through like even in places of employment, sexual harassment, like we had to come to this realization that this was going on and it's completely wrong, to the point that you better be careful if you even ask someone, hey, would you like to get a coffee outside of work? Because it could be misconstrued. And
So
so,
what you're saying is that because Christians have been browbeaten into being soft on LGB,
mhm,
that is allowing Micheal Tait to
yep,
get all this sympathy.
yeah. I think there's
Where if it was
less.
women that he was doing this to, he wouldn't get the sympathy.
I think there would be much more of an outrage.
I think the Bible speaks about both being incredibly sinful.
Well, they are. They're equally sinful, but
Yeah.
that's where I'm saying there's a double standard here.
Mhm.
Because if it were young girls, and let's face it, at 20, 22, 23 years old, you're still not necessarily all that mature.
Yes.
And you got this 50-year-old something who's doing this stuff, that would be totally creepy.
Yeah.
It'd be totally like, ugh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that is not by and large been the reaction. However,
So people who are professing to be Christians are blaming other Christians for not playing the music rather than what Tate actually did to other human beings.
right.
And that's what frustrates you.
Exactly. So let's take a look at one more comment, because this one gave me a little bit of hope. And there were a few comments on the K-Love social media that were like this one that says, "Thank you, K-Love, for caring about victims right now. Not to say the music can't ever be added back, but for now, while it's raw, it's best for the victims. Everyone has so much sympathy for the criminals, the pedophiles, the perpetrators, but very little for victims, which make it so hard for them to come out or come forward in the first place." I kind of added that myself, but it makes it hard for them to come forward. If we had as much or more sympathy and care and respect and support for victims, maybe more would come out and get the help and the support and the healing that they need, and not have this being ongoing for 20 some years.
Well, you think about
in
the
the Christian
you think about the
community.
Catholic priest abuses and how it was so hard for people to come forward. Well, I certainly don't believe the priest would do that.
Right.
Think about how much more in the Christian community saying, yeah, the lead singer for the Newsboys, DC Talk's own Micheal Tait, you're not going to believe him.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, you sure?
Yeah,
Are
you'd
you
be really hesitant to believe him.
That's
Yeah.
the kind of thing that I think that last post that you just showed really goes after. And
Yeah.
that is that we have to really keep our eyes and ears open and stay grounded in the word.
Right.
Because for every 5 or 6 of these guys, here's the problem. The flip side of the coin is the Duke lacrosse team being falsely accused. Oh, believe the victim, believe the victim,
I
believe the
forgot
victim.
that. Yeah.
So anybody can get targeted with this. And I've seen many guys that I believe, stone cold, they were falsely accused.
Yeah.
And so you've got both sides of that. But the reality is that's what makes it difficult. But Micheal knows all the Christian doctrine, and he slowly just, I think, got his conscience seared, as the scripture says.
Yeah.
And so now, we have people doing backflips over wanting to just esteem Micheal and restore Micheal because he's repentant now. And it's like, I don't know what you guys are thinking, but I have gone on record as saying I don't think Micheal should ever have a microphone on a stage ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, if he really loves the Lord and he really surrenders to the Lord, go to some small church, get into a Bible study, live your life. He probably doesn't need a job. I mean, he probably can go for many years without income problems, and just serve the Lord quietly.
Yeah.
In a quiet setting.
Yeah.
Trust us. We know the benefit of that.
That's the thing too. I mean, think about the accusations that kind of had come out, and as Christians, let's say these accusations came out against some secular band lead singer. Oh, how shameful that would be. And we have no problem, chastising and calling sin what it is when it's outside the church.
Right.
But when it's inside the church, it's almost like you have to give it a pass now.
Yeah.
What is that? The Bible says when God starts disciplining, he starts with his children, right? And that's the thing, is that if it's not acceptable outside the church, it certainly isn't acceptable inside the church.
Mainstream media and even some of the Christian churches that are kind of on the woke side are going to start blaming Christians that it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault for not allowing Tait to openly live his homosexual lifestyle and sing for Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming. That's what we're here to sound the alarm about in this particular episode.
That's already kind of been out there, that they're blaming Christians that Tait has been caught up in this secret life. If he just would have been allowed to be gay, he would be in this committed, wonderful homosexual relationship the whole time, and he never would have done anything wrong. Like, that is just so bad.
They say at the end times, not only will be there the great falling away, but the great falling away will be marked by sin not being sinful anymore.
Exactly.
And if we're not living that, I don't know what we're living.
Pursuing our own pleasures. That's definitely going to be the mark of the last days. So, I feel bad for him. I feel bad. I feel especially bad, though, for the victims. I even feel bad for the rest of the band. Like, that stinks, But I feel mostly for the victims. And I think, like I was saying before, instead of looking at this through the lens of opinion or emotion or what I want and my radio station and my music and what I like and my personal, let's look at it from a biblical lens. Because here's the reality. And this gets back to what I was saying before about, is his double life the drug use and the homosexuality and the assaults, or is his double life the pretending you're a Christian? And I would say the latter is more likely. So let's take a look at John chapter 8, verses 31 through 36. And it says this: So Jesus was saying to those Jews who had believed him, "If you continue in my word, then you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will
set you free."
They answered him, "We're Abraham's descendants, and we have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free?" Now, this is key. Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin. Now, the slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son does remain forever. So if the Son sets you free, you really will be free."
You will be free.
That's
indeed.
The marker.
I don't know why. That's
someone
funny.
who has, number one, pretty devastating sin. This isn't like, this is bad. And it's been going on for more than 20 years. Is that the Son setting him free indeed? I don't think so. I hope he comes to true repentance. I hope he comes out of all of that stuff. I won't be surprised if he just turns and, like you were saying, Chris, goes with that mainstream idea that, hey, you know what, maybe homosexuality isn't really bad. And I was just doing that because I was fighting what's real and true. I don't know. He hasn't done that. I want to make that clear. But he hasn't been set free. He's going on and on and on and on. And 20 plus years on and on. That's not being set free. Okay. Number 2, let's go to Matthew chapter 7, verses 16 through 23. This is talking about good trees bearing good fruit and bad trees bearing bad fruit. And verse 16 starts out, "You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles. Are they?
Are they?
Are they? No. So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree," this is key, "cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit." It's impossible. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then you will know them by their fruits. And then it goes on to scripture, Chris, that you and I have talked about quite often, where Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the ones who do the will of my Father who is in heaven, they will enter. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles and concerts and music and all that stuff. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Leave me, you who practice lawlessness.
Yeah.
That's the biblical perspective. That's the biblical lens. And so our hope as Christians should be, like I said before, that he comes completely out of this stuff forever and ever and is truly set free. And it is not the call of Christians to turn around and start pointing fingers at other Christians because they make a decision not to listen to this or to do that or whatever. It's just calm down, take a breath, and the truth will come out. That is for sure. So, there's a lot of people out there that I know listen to the Newsboys, love the Newsboys. It's DC Talk.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to get to that in a second.
And, I can hear them because I've heard it before, like with false teachers and so on. But I listened to them and they helped me so much and it was so good. And what they did was just so helpful for me. It encouraged me and it did all this stuff. Well, I would say to them, your appreciation and your thanksgiving is being put in the wrong place. If you've gotten any encouragement, if you've gotten any strengthening, if you've gotten any, great wind in your sail of faith, you need to be thanking God. That's from God. And God will and use whomever and whatever he wants. But your appreciation has to be toward God. God did that. The Newsboys didn't do that. Chris and Emilee didn't do that. Your pastor didn't do that. God did that. And that's where our love and our thanks and our appreciation needs to be. And our empathy needs to be with the victims and our hope for restoration for Micheal Tait. And that is all.
And that is the Gramster rant.
Yeah, that was kind of a long one.
Yeah, that was kind of a big.
Yeah, we switched gears and we really switched gears.
Yeah, and somehow.
Oh, we lost our we lost our camera. Can you bring it back here real quick?
I don't know.
Oh, did you?
There we go.
There you are. There I am.
Yeah, does that work? Yeah.
There.
Ta-da!
We're back.
That one, that Gramster rant just took us in a thing. Okay.
It was even too heavy for the interweb.
It is time for the Salvaged by God deep dive. And the Salvaged by God portion, we're going to stick right with the Newsboys.
All right.
We're going to stick with this whole concept. And I want to get back into, you wanted to do a biblical expose, and I think you did a good job.
Thanks, Pastor. I appreciate that.
That wasn't pastor. That was co-host compliment there. Yeah. I just want you guys to know that as you watch the show, as you listen to the show, we have a deep love for authentic Christianity, and it comes directly from the Savior, and it's part of our journey. And I want to try to use some total honesty here in my storytelling of this Salvaged by God. We're going to be going to Matthew 13 in just a second, but in the spirit of total honesty, I want to just back up about 30 years. Okay. I had a deep love in high school for a band, and the band was Van Halen. I love Van Halen. And the reason I love Van Halen is it wasn't my brother's band. Now, my brother was into like The Who, and he had Boston and Eric Clapton albums and stuff like that. I was a Van Halen kid, and that was who I was. And so David Lee Roth left the band, and Sammy Hagar came into the band. And I really was bummed for about a year until the first album came out. And Emilee can tell you, when I play, I do have Van Halen in a playlist, like when I'm in the backyard grilling.
I make him skip.
And yeah, she does. She tells me to skip it. But the 4 songs I have in the playlist, this is ironic, and this is part of the story, are all Sammy Hagar songs.
Oh, interesting.
They're all Sammy Hagar.
I didn't
songs.
know that. Yeah.
And it's from the two of the different albums. I really started to appreciate Sammy Hagar. Now, fast forward to our journey with Christian music.
Okay.
We go all in with Jesus. We're no longer going to be a part of that life. I left sports broadcasting behind. I left my secular rock music behind. And so we started listening to Christian rock. There was a band called Petra, there was others, and I was trying so hard to like it, but I always felt like it was just a little subpar. You know, quite honestly, back in those days, the recording studio and the money you put into your recordings really affected the product that
Yeah.
came out. And the Christians just didn't have the funds.
Mhm.
And so their music was lesser than. It just felt like that
Right.
until a band came along called the Newsboys.
Mm.
And they had a song called Breakfast. And they had another song that they just one after another that I just started liking. And they had a little bit of a rock twinge to them that was, to me, kind of cool. And so they were like my favorite Christian band from Jump Street. And I love Jars of Clay as well. It's around the same time. You know, they had a song called Flood that came out that actually crossed over into the top 40. And keep in mind, I'm working for secular radio during this time. We're not in Christian broadcasting when I first got turned on to these guys. And so then we get into broadcasting on Christian stations, and the Newsboys have always been and will always be, for me, in high rotation.
Mm.
Now, because of that, I'm not alone in that. Every radio station in the country needs to put out a press release as to what they're going to do with the Newsboys music.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying that is this is a litmus test now for every single station. And what K-Love did, I think, is the classic weak-wristed, you're a wuss, you shouldn't have even said anything if you're going to say something that lame. We're just going to put it on pause till the storm blows over, then we'll decide what we're going to do. And trust me, the program director for K-Love is a friend of mine who I have high respect for. I mean, his phone numbers in my phone, I could text him and say, dude, do a better job. But I never would because I love the guy. He's a great guy. But I think he's wrong on this one. They need to come out and say, we are pulling all Micheal Tait Newsboys music forever. And that the Newsboys that's going to be heard on K-Love is going to be the Peter Furler version.
Yeah, they
And
could do
that's
that.
it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that, because this is what happens when Christians are held accountable. Like if a pastor falls into sexual sin, biblically, he should never be back in the pulpit.
Right.
Can he be restored? Yes. Can he be forgiven? Of course. We want to forgive and restore people, but not back to that position.
Right.
Not back to that position. Like I say, Micheal Tait, repent. Go serve Jesus quietly somewhere, and don't ever get on the stage with a microphone for the rest of your life. You've been disqualified. But if you can find peace and love in Jesus, we encourage it. We want that. We want everybody to come to know the Lord. So, with the Newsboys, there was a relationship there, and I just want to share this with you for a couple of different reasons. One is credibility. I want you to understand that when we're talking about something, we're not talking about it like some journalist, at 2,000 feet away. This is up close and personal. Let me just show you this. I have been gifted some gold records, and we've had a great relationship with different things. I've got Chris Tomlin stories. Third Day dedicated a song to us from the stage in Flagstaff, Arizona. I got one of their gold records on the wall. Jeremy Camp, we had a great year run with Jeremy Camp as he was coming up. His gold record is on my wall. Well, also on my wall is my Newsboys collection. And you can see on the one, it's the Go CD. And that guitar pick is from Peter Furler. And that's Emilee and I with the Newsboys. And of course, this is all before Micheal Tait. And so when Peter left the band and went out on his own, when he came to town, when he came to Grand Rapids, Emilee and Peter Furler painted different oil paintings together. He did one, Emilee did one, they collaborated on one, and I think we sold that and gave the money to some orphanage that was being built. But we did listeners, like 5 people could win this contest and come and paint with Emilee and Peter Furler backstage at the festival. And so, I mean, we had this relationship. One of the greatest moments of my life is in Tucson, Arizona. The Newsboys are doing this concert for the Global Tribe, and 15,000 people showed up, and I'm the main MC. And we're standing backstage. It's just me and the Newsboys, the band, and we're just talking. And then I go out and tee up Peter Furler and hand him the microphone, and he gives like a 10-minute message and a gospel response, an altar call. And over 700 people came to the right field side of the baseball stadium that was just packed and gave their lives to Christ. And then he handed the microphone back to me, and I closed the proceedings from the speaking part while the band got ready, and then they closed with a song. So when you close a service like that in prayer in front of 15,000 people, and you turn around and the Newsboys start a song, that was one of the most powerful moments of my whole career, my whole ministry, my whole trying to serve Jesus. So to see the Newsboys be caught up in this, it's just really, really hard. After Michael became the lead singer, Emilee, it was just you, and you remember this, right? It was you, me, and their manager, along with the four Newsboys members, and Michael was there. Micheal Tait was there, and it was just a dinner of us with us in the green room. It was a very nice hour that we spent together. And in those environments, I'm always hanging out with Duncan. Me and Duncan, we're the same height. He's funny. I'm trying to be funny.
Maturity level.
We're usually getting in trouble. Jeff Frankenstein's another one that, I mean, we just kind of connect with him. We kind of cheer him on. But was there a distance with Michael that day, or was it just me?
It just felt very different than when Peter Furler was there. It just felt more genuine, more lighthearted, and more, I don't know.
Yeah.
It felt there was a difference. We'll just say that. Yeah.
And was it the David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar vibe, or was it something different? I don't know. Looking back, I mean, I liked Michael with the band. I thought he was a good fit. I loved the song "Born Again." I loved the song "God's Not Dead" when it came out with the movie, which is another one of my favorites. And so it's just, let me tell you this story, and then I'm going to get to my scriptures, and then I'm done.
I doubt that.
When we were, hang on.
Okay.
When we were,
let's hydrate.
When we were first coming up in the Christian industry, we did not really understand how things went. And we were in Alaska, and we were on a little station in the Bering Sea called KAKN in Naknek, Alaska. You can look it up. The station's still there. And we would come down and we would do these tours to raise money for the station. And we would do, we weren't really doing comedy shows at that time, but we would try to add humor into our little presentations. And you and I ended up in North Carolina. And there was it was a Friday night. We weren't speaking until Saturday, I think, at this in this town. So we had a free night. And there was a band called Sonic Flood that was playing, kind of a youth event, but a public event. There was other adults there. And so we said, instead of sitting in our hotel room, we said, let's go down to the Sonic Flood concert. So we go down there, and it was just, I don't know, there had to be about 1,000 kids there in that bigger church cafegimatorium or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they just played a fun worship set. I mean, they were singing their hits. They had a couple hits at the time. They were singing songs for Jesus. The dude had a Bible that he pulled out and set down on the stool next to him, and he read a little bit. And at the end of the concerts, the lights came up, and everybody, a lot of kids came up to the stand to shake hands with the band or whatever, but it wasn't an autograph line. And then about half an hour after, the youth are starting to go kind of congregate together, and the youth pastor's trying to organize, the band starts tearing down their own equipment.
Right, yeah.
And I go up there and start talking to them about what it's like to be on the road serving Jesus. You remember that. I always do that, right?
You're always bothering people
Now,
in the middle of their work.
Fast forward 2 years, and now we're the hot big morning show in Phoenix, Arizona, okay? And we get invited to MC the Mercy Me concert. And it was a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
Nothing against Mercy Me. I'm not, Bart Millard and I Can Only Imagine, and, the movie that the Irwin brothers made and all that. God bless you. Bart's been on our show, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. Nice enough guys. They're nice enough guys. But it was unbelievable. The security that they had, the green room experience. It was all rock star stuff now. Yeah. It wasn't serving Jesus and singing for Jesus. Now we're rock stars. And I remember just being completely turned off by all of that. I didn't have the right badge on, and I got turned around and had to, make 3 phone calls to be able to get my badge to even get backstage again. And it was just an awful experience, and it just totally turned me off to what Christian music was becoming. And so then from that point on, we must have emceed, I don't know, 100 different concerts, 10 different festivals. We've just been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And in that process, we have seen that they're not all Christians.
True.
They're not all Christians. In fact, Emilee, I want your response to this statement. Here's the statement.
Okay.
If it comes down to advancing the gospel or making money, we're going to choose to make money.
Yeah.
That's what 90 to 95% of all Christian artists in the Christian industry are about.
Well, I think so, because you look at a lot of the really good artists that come up and they seem to have a very genuine faith, and they put out some really good music, and then they're just gone. And, I think of like,
Aaron Schust,
Aaron Shute,
Todd Agnew.
Todd Agnew, and
Legit guys who love Jesus.
are legit people
Yeah.
that are in the industry, but the industry is still the industry. There's a strong influence over them, and Rich Mullins even talked about that so many years ago that they wanted him to write music that they wanted him to write, and he kind of just refused. And so what you have to realize is that, like CCM and all these Christian record labels, they're owned by the big secular conglomerate music company.
Yeah,
It's
all the little
almost
guys have all been bought up now by Columbia and Universal and all those,
so
right?
there's really kind of no such thing as a Christian music label. They're just a label that's going through the same people that are okaying all the other secular music. You know what I mean? They don't care.
There was a band called Rush of Fools that came in studio with us in Arizona.
Yeah, that's another one.
And I gave them $20 for gas. And they have 2 #1 hits.
I know.
Because the record label had taken everything.
They took
from
all
them.
of it. Yep.
And this was a private supposedly Christian label. And so, you hear these stories, you see what's going on, and there is no there look, Rich Mullins had a contract where he would get paid from his own committee that he set up that included, I think, his sister and some other people, that he'd get paid whatever a working man was getting, the average working man's salary. So the last Rich Mullins got paid before he died in a car wreck in 98, I think it was, he was getting like $40,000 a year, even though his music was making $1 million.
Right.
So they were taking the rest of his money and they were putting it into missions and other things. No one does that today.
Right.
No one does that today, because if they did say that, then the record company would just take it all and give them pittance.
Exactly.
They just wouldn't care. It's so cutthroat and so heartless,
and
which is the exact opposite of the total gospel message. So.
I remember going to some of these festivals where there were a lot of artists, and Chris, you and I were fresh off the mission field, and some of their music we would listen to. It's really good music, and it's like that music would be so good for the Native American population out there in far western Alaska, which they don't have access to things like what we do.
And we wanted to find a way to get back there and do more ministry.
Yeah. And so we brought, hey, would you guys ever think about going up to rural, western, remote Alaska?
Small planes only.
And they would get so excited. Their eyes would start getting big and they're like, yeah, that'd be so cool. That'd be so great. And then they realized, it would come out of your pocket because it would be mission. And you saw their face just, oh.
Yeah. And I used to always.
They were immediately no longer interested.
And I used to always we started doing it as like let's just find out if we're dealing with live or Memorex here.
Yeah.
And I would say, and here's the best part. You get paid nothing, and you're going to have to cough up a little bit of your riches to actually get out there. What do you think? It'll be serving Jesus.
Oh.
And they just get deflated. And it's just like, no, that ain't what we do. That ain't how we roll. And some of them, try to stammer and, try to still hold face, but you can see it in their face.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this isn't some big mission organization that's going to dump World Vision money on you. Okay. That's not happening here.
Right.
This is just an opportunity for you to legitimately go and serve Jesus with some abandon in your life, with a little sacrifice.
There were a few artists.
With a little pinch of a pain for you to do it, but you'd be blessed. Oh, and you would bless others.
There were just a very few who actually continued on as in, oh yeah, okay, and they were still genuinely interested. In fact, the DeVivos from
Casting Crowns,
they actually did go out to Alaska, not on our suggestion, but
no, they were not on our suggestion, but they did that.
They were a part of that.
They took some of their riches that God had blessed them with, and they put it back into doing ministry in rural Alaska. It was awesome.
There are genuine Christian artists. There are,
like Phillips, Craig, and Dean.
They're getting fewer and further between.
Yes. No, a lot of them want the rock star mentality. And here's the other thing. How come every female Christian artist has to look a certain way? How come all the young Christian male bands have to look a certain way?
Yeah.
They're
just being pushed into the same box as secular bands.
I'm not going to tell you who it is, but there is a well-known band that was sitting in their bus waiting for a promoter to give him a $50,000 check, and he was going to lose on this concert because he didn't sell the tickets he thought he was going to. And they sat in their bus waiting for him to give the check. And when he finally came out and said, listen, you guys just do the show. I'll pay you the best I can. It may not be 50. It may take me a month to get to the 50, but we can trust Jesus together. And they shut the door and drove away.
Oh, wow.
And that's a fact.
Wow.
And, you know, when you think of like, well, Rebecca St. James and her dad, David Smallbone, Emilee emceed an event called the She Event with Rebecca St. James.
Several of them, yeah.
And what was the Come On Ring Your Bells lady name?
Evie
Carlson. Yeah, it was Evie and Rebecca St. James. Well, the Smallbones were the only other men in the whole building. Like that one, 1,500 ladies and me, the sound guy, and David Smallbone and his two sons, Joel and Luke. Luke was 15 at the time. And so we're hanging out talking, and we're backstage, and he's trying to do devotions with everybody. He's trying, he wanted his boys to maybe come up and start singing and doing stuff because they had talent, but he really wanted Christ to be the main thing. That was what he gave off. And how many events did we do with them? 4?
Several. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to know him a little bit. You know what I mean? Well, now his boys, Joel and Luke, are known as For King and Country. They don't go out for less than $175,000 a concert.
Yeah.
Is that right or wrong?
Things change.
That depends on your perspective. Is it right or wrong?
Yeah.
You know, I love those guys. I mean, when we knew them, they were Joel and Luke, and now they're For King and Country. And since they become For King and Country, we've never seen them before or since. We just checked out. We checked out of the industry because of that. We're not rolling our bus away if you don't have a check for us for $50,000. We're going on stage to do what we're called to do by God and let the chips fall where they may.
We're not going to pedal our bike away.
What do you mean?
We don't have a bus.
Oh, no, I'm talking about that to me was one of the most disturbing things in Christian industry.
Yeah.
So when we say the Christian industry is messed up, we mean it. And this is just the tip of the sadness iceberg, to be honest with you. It really is. And so you don't know how sorry it is to be in an environment where the only true goal is to try to have the joy of the Lord, the hope that's found in Jesus as our substitute, and wanting to share that with people, and then being saddled with everybody else around you saying, if we can't make money on it, we don't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I'm a pastor in rural America. And there's an opportunity for us to make another movie.
Yeah.
And it's coming right now. I've got a producer that called me this week, and we want to do a follow-up to Bible Idiots. And it's called Fools for Christ is the working title of the story. And you want to know something? We have to be able to pay the people that are going to do the work on the movie.
Exactly.
But after that, it's in God's hands. Why can't we just do work for the kingdom and leave it in God's hands? Like Fresh Road Media. Why are we doing this show? Why are we still putting this out? Why are we here behind these microphones when there is really and the Christian industry would have shut this show down a year ago. Mm-hmm. But here we are. Because we're leaving the results in God. And there's a couple of you that have reached out and said that you like the show, that the show means something to you, that it's light in your world every week. Mm-hmm. And because of that, we'll keep trying to do it as best as we can. We need some studio upgrades. So if you could go to freshroadmedia.com and give a gift, that would sure be helpful. But that's, that's my salvage by God idea, is that the Christian industry is broken and we have to be above it as authentic Christians in our own way.
Yeah, I would say that the Christian industry is like every other industry. It is what it is, and it's just not going to be any different than anything else. And when you think about it, like look at the restaurants. Some new restaurant will open up. I remember when Applebee's opened up. I remember
eating good in the neighborhood
when Chili's opened up, and it was like step above, just a step above the family dining, whatever. Mm-hmm. And
the country kitchen.
It was good and it was wonderful for a while, and now they're kind of dives. I mean, Outback is like, avoid that one altogether. Maybe there's one or two that are still good.
Emily got a bad blooming onion one time.
They start out with the right purpose. They start out with the right intention. And as time goes on and money's the bottom line, what happens? Mm-hmm. The product becomes less and less and less. The staff becomes less and less and less. And pretty soon it's not what it was before. Christian industry, no different. But like I said before, I don't want people to be discouraged. There are still Christian artists out there, and I like the fact that people support them. Um, but yeah, this shouldn't surprise us.
I'd much rather you're listening to K-Love than a lot of other stations. I'll put it that way.
Right. But
And
at what point is it like it doesn't matter? You know what I mean?
I know.
If you're if you're putting out this bad music that really is doctrinally not sound, you've got band members who are involved in
Yeah.
all kinds
Well, they're
of sin,
humans, you know.
and all the money's going to this big secular conglomerate anyway. At that point, go ahead, turn on the secular station. Like,
Yeah.
what difference does it make?
And on that
You know?
upbeat note, let me move to the scriptures. I am writing a sermon series called on the 7 churches of Revelation.
Yes.
And if you want to hear the messages, you just need to search Salvage by God wherever you get podcast content, or freshroadmedia.com. YouTube's are there along with we've even got it to now where they can transcribe the AI can transcribe my messages. So you can even read them if you'd like. I think they're better audio than they are video. I don't like what I look like preaching anymore. It doesn't matter, but that's the influence of the Christian industry, is that we, at one point, Emilee and I had image consultants, and we were supposed to wear the rock revival jeans and all that stuff, and it was just awful.
It's awful.
And
it's like, I remember the old days when your seminary professors were like, when you get up to preach God's word, you need to dress and act in a way that takes all attention off yourself and puts it all on Christ. That was the mentality years ago.
Well, Matthew 13, verses 3 through 10 is one of my foundational passages for the 7 churches of Revelation. And you're going to have to tune in on Sunday at Salvage by God or next week to hear how I use this. I'm going to be very brief, but I use this to set up the 7 churches. Why? Because the 7 churches are people who have at one point been in good ground.
Right.
Okay. And when they were in good ground, then they started to wobble.
Just like Applebee's.
I don't know when Applebee's became subpar, but I'm going to find out after the show. Anyway, Jesus in Matthew 13, 3 through 10, it's so self-explanatory. He said, and he told them many things in parables, saying, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And the point of that is that Jesus is the one who opens eyes and opens ears. Okay, so the disciples come to him here in 10 on through the quote from Isaiah, asking him, why do you speak in parables? And Jesus is like, you're so lucky that you get to be here, because a lot of people want to be here that can't be here and hear what you're hearing. But he said in verse 15, this is a quote from Isaiah, for the people's heart has grown dull, and their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed. Least they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart, and what? And turn, and I would heal them. And so that's my hope for Micheal Tait and for these people that are questioning all the different reactions, which is all over the board because of the culture we live in, the consumer Christian culture that is permeated, and the browbeating we have taken from society against biblical wisdom. Instead, we're using human wisdom in our feelings. All right. So they want to hear what the meaning of the parable is.
Right.
So in verse 18, Jesus actually tells us what the meaning of the parable is. He says, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. That is what was sown along the path. What's he saying? People are going to hear the gospel. They may not even reject it or choose to try to fight against it, but it won't hold. And they'll eventually become a scoffer. They'll shrug it off. They'll do whatever. Verse 20, as for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he himself has no root in himself, but endures for a while, and then when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately falls away. I call this the false conversion of I've asked Jesus into my heart.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what? I'm trying to add Jesus onto what I got going on. There's joy there because here's a way out of my problems. And you know what? There's more problems being a Christian than not. So I'm going to fade away. Verse 22. As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. This is the Christian industry.
Yeah.
This is another one who asked Jesus into their heart, but they did it because they wanted to add Jesus to what they had going on in a bigger way. And they really were hoping that Jesus would make them a better salesman, a better homemaker, give them a better jump shot, all of those things. Verse 23, as for what was sown on good soil, good ground Christians, good ground churches, this is what it's about. And the Christian industry does not have good soil anymore. Almost everywhere it has no good soil. Yeah. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. What's my point? My point is this. Emilee and I will do all we can to keep Fresh Encounter Church, the church I pastor, a good ground church. And I have begged God to send me to people who would also be good ground Christians. And I have a leadership team and also other Christians in leadership positions that may not be part of the eldership team. And this is about as strong as core as we've ever seen. And like you, if you've been listening this long, we've seen a lot. And so we are blessed to have this good ground church. Well, guess what? We know that the enemy's going to attack it. Mm-hmm. So we then need to even be all the more deeper into the good ground soil, right?
Yeah.
Fresh Road Media is Emilee's little brainchild, along with another man from our church. He's an elder, Larry Hopp. You're going to hear him in just a minute when we close the show. He's the general manager of Fresh Road Media. Fresh Road Media must stay a good ground ministry. Why? Because if you plant your financial seed in either the church that I'm the pastor of or the ministry that Emilee's the president of, we want it to be where it'll be a good ground where the seed will then generate and give us 100-fold, 30-fold, 60-fold. Of what? Money so we can redo our studio? No. Of the gospel going out and lives being changed because of the love of Jesus Christ, who is your substitute. You are sinful. Doesn't matter what the sin is. Fill in the blank. You cannot save yourself, and you cannot be in the presence of a holy God. Only through the blood of Jesus Christ can you be in front of a holy God. And when you write his blood, when you put his blood over the doorposts of your life, you now have eternal life, and now you want to live for him. Well, what ground are you in?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in the rocky soil? Well, then come on over to the good ground. And that's what I'm trying to say. We are watching Micheal Tait and a lot of the other Christian things that have happened in the Christian industry because they are in either the rocky soil or the thorny soil. They're not in good ground. They're not on the path either, because the path is those that just reject it. Mm-hmm. So many people have a bent towards Christianity, one way, shape, or form, but what ground are they in? And that is why, yes, listen to Christian music more than secular music. Yes, get into the Word of God. Yes, go to a church that's available to you, but look for the good ground. Mm-hmm. And when I say this, I'm going to end with this. Even in the music, there's good ground music, and then there's not good ground music.
Yeah.
There's, we're giving praise and worship to Jesus, and there's, God is love and Jesus is my boyfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, so
yeah,
there's
exactly.
that.
Yeah, that was actually one of the...
And that's my Salvaged by God deep dive.
I love that. That was very good. One of the comments that I did run across with regard to response to Caleb pulling their music for the immediate future was, Caleb's supposed to be about love, and that's just not very loving. And, like the one lady comparing it to cancel culture and having no concept of the people that have been hurt or harmed, having no empathy or love toward the oppressed and the victim. And Jesus was a staunch defender of those who were vulnerable. Mm-hmm. He really, really was. And so but he gets us. He ate with sinners. He never condemned anybody. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Jesus ate with sinners in order to offer them the kingdom. Yeah. In order to offer them forgiveness. Yeah. To call them out, call them out of where they were. He doesn't want to leave us where they are. And in fact,
I'm just a wee bit frustrated.
We were doing our devotions this morning, and it was very interesting because we were doing Charles Spurgeon,
Yeah, Funky Chuck, morning and evening.
Morning and evening in that
Mhm.
verse that says we love because he first loved us. The love that we have even for one another and the love that we have even toward God is from God. It doesn't originate from
We
ourselves.
can't conjure it up.
And so, Jesus told us you just have to be ready to walk away from everything that the world has to offer. That includes your favorite band. It really does. If there's just sinful,
But not the
awful,
Newsboys, Lord. No, not the Newsboys.
awful things going on, why are you afraid to lay it down?
Yeah.
Because the love that we have is the love that only Christ gives to us. And so I just thought that that was very, very poignant, and that we have to be ready for the love of others, for the love of the vulnerable, for the love of people who are caught in whatever and need freedom
Mhm.
and need reassurance and need those things, that comes from God, not from the Newsboys, not from Chris and Emily, but from God himself. So remember that. Get into God's word today, because his word is life. And, it's going to make the things of the world really grow strangely dim when we are focused on the light and life of Jesus Christ. So do
There's so
that.
many times that people want you to like and subscribe, and we would love for you to like and subscribe what we've got going on here. And also comments on like YouTube, I guess,
Yes.
really, really help. We don't care about that. We would rather you comment directly. Send us an email. And if you're watching, the email's on the screen. If you're listening, it's Emilee at freshroadmedia.com. That's Emilee at freshroadmedia.com, or Chris at freshroadmedia.com. And I have got a free book for anybody who will send me an email telling me to put a playlist together of Van Halen, the Newsboys, and Jars of Clay the next time I'm grilling in the backyard.
No, we're not going to do that.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
But we will be back next week with how AI, how that is advancing and causing problems for believers everywhere. Also, Bible translations, how they are really going awry. And hopefully, next week we'll be back with Right On, Way Off. Again, Mike Shaw couldn't join us this week, but I have a Right On, Way Off statement from a listener, and that's next week.
Wow.
You're going to love it, Chris.
Can't wait to hear that.
Yes.
Larry Hopp, if you stayed around this long, he's our general manager. He's got a little message for you right now. And No Apology with Emilee and Chris. We'll be back next week.
If you're like me and you see God moving, you want to come alongside and join in the work of the Lord. I'm seeing Jesus change lives through the preaching of salvage by God and the joy of the Lord in the talk show No Apology with Emilee and Chris. All of this being generated from the nonprofit Fresh Road Media. We'd love it if you'd consider joining us and supporting this amazing outreach. You can even join our tribe for free. If you subscribe really at any levels, we have some wonderful resources as a way of saying thank you. Go to freshroadmedia.com and be part of something new and really, quite frankly, something that we so need in today's world. And welcome to our tribe.